Two, here we are, 2015. We got DT K12 chat, the show. So, just had a very lively Twitter feed there going with all kinds of wonderful questions on getting the basics down in design thinking, and yet I felt like I was having to really scratch my head and really kind of work at defining and redefining my views of what design thinking is. And to me, that's one of the great things about design thinking is its ability to be defined and redefined. On our chat tonight, we had Brian from way out in Ohio, right? Are you in
Yes, it's still
Dayton,
Ohio.
Dayton, right? Dayton, Ohio?
You got it, you got it.
And then we also have Chris. He's over in Georgia, right?
Yes, yes, indeed. In the very, very cold Atlanta.
How cold is it there in Atlanta right now?
Tonight, I think it's supposed to drop to like 14.
Whoa.
Holy, no way.
Yeah, we're supposed to wake up tomorrow with a wind chill of 0.
No. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That
it's
does
chilly.
not sound right. That's like too south for that kind of.
You guys aren't anything. I'm sorry.
Man. The Chad also had we had a co-mod also of Dan Ryder. Dan Ryder was oh my goodness, what is that?
2. Awesome.
2.
1.
Oh my goodness. Those are that's not right.
Yeah. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
We also had Dan Ryder joining us on the chat tonight, and so we had the 3 amigos, Dan, Brian, and Chris, kicking it, giving out the boom shakalakas, and the topic for tonight was defining and redefining design thinking K12, and it was trying to develop an understanding or the basics in design thinking and how design thinking in the school system and education system has maybe redefined what we thought of as design thinking, and maybe how the education system and design thinking systems, whenever they combine, I wonder if there's some kind of polyphony there. I'm throwing that word out.
That's a good word.
That is strong.
I'm gonna write that down.
So, what do you think, Chris? On the opening question, we were talking about kind of what do you think when you see the word design, and so you're going straight at that main word in design thinking. I think is design. What do you see as the purpose, and what do you think design is all about?
Well, I think when people typically think of design, there's everybody. I say everybody. I can't really speak for everybody, but I think what happens is that it gives purpose for whatever it is that you're making or doing, and so if you think about design and intentionality, then there's got to be a target. There's got to be a user in mind. So just thinking about design that way kind of leads you to defining who that user is, which are the natural progressions and the steps that we tend to use in design thinking in this process. So I really wanted that question to kind of open up, and we saw a lot of discussion, and my computer was going berserko, so I missed a lot of stuff, and I'll have to go back and unpack a lot of the conversation. But there's some really cool things that popped up in the feed tonight around design.
Yeah, I clipped a few. James was talking about how design was intentional creativity, the application of intentional creativity. I like that. And then Lisa was great with her definitions. I love Lisa's definitions. Whenever she has a definition, I usually favor it and try to think of how I can reuse that somewhere. She was saying that design itself indicates some type of action. She's very action-oriented, and I love that aspect of design thinking. And I think, Brian, you kind of responded to that in talking about the importance of action. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to go to Big Ideas Fest back in December, and that was a big refrain, was that design thinking is all about a a bias for action. That it's iteration and creativity and failing fast and getting the better answers all requires you actually doing something. You know, I'm an abstract thinker kind of guy, but at some point you have to pull the trigger and try some stuff, get it in front of some people, get some feedback, come back, and do it all over again. And that's the design, and keeping contact with those people that that you're designing for, as Chris said, the user, the target. That's to me the most powerful part of it.
Yeah, I like that that idea of having purpose behind what you're creating, and that I think a lot of people were just kind of using that idea of having some kind of direction, purpose, action to your creativity, and I really do. That's what draws me to design thinking probably more than anything else. It's action oriented, and it's really trying to get, because I'm like you, Brian. I'm very abstract thinker. I'm very much, I like to think about things a whole lot before I do anything, and sometimes my planning and organization gets to the point where nothing gets done, and there's no shipping of the product or the idea at the end. It's just a bunch of doodles on paper or notes on a page.
Right. Do you find?
I'm sorry. I think that is a big issue for people in general. You know, we tend to get these great ideas, and in a group of 10, maybe one of us goes, "What are you waiting for?" You know, and that's usually not me. I'm usually the guy behind that guy going, "What do you think about doing with this?" You know, and so I think there's some great ideas that design thinking in general has kind of helped me put legs on a lot of these ideas, and connecting with the group. This PLN is unbelievable.
Right.
You know, reaching out across the United States, across to New Zealand with some of these folks at BC, and then somebody taking you by the hand and going, "That is a great idea. Let's do that. I'll see you in South by Southwest. I'll see you at, you know, let's do it." And I think that's something that's very cool about sort of connecting design and its people-orientedness, and this group of, you know, this DT K12 chat group of people, which, you know, I think there's others out there that are waiting for their own hashtag. We'll just strap it to them from the clock tower.
Do you think that your role as an educator has changed the way you think about design thinking over time, or do you think that it was whenever you first started applying design thinking that you kind of had a pretty good idea about it, and you're just kind of circling and coming back to that mindset and just renegotiating that mindset?
I think for me, and this is kind of how I've stumbled into all this, is that I think we all have already been design thinking. We've already been solving problems. We've given these steps that we adopt, whatever steps they are, we've given them different names. And for me, when I came into design thinking in the group that I get to work with at Mount Vernon here in Atlanta, it gave names to all the things that I just did with students, or you know, or the way I solved problems or addressed things. And so really that just launched all kinds of sort of I think it just made everything more efficient for me, and that's kind of how it all kind of started for me. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I think design thinking, if you know, regardless of who you're designing for or what you're trying to get accomplished, the focus on collaboration and empathy and creativity are all those things that we know. You know, all the experts are telling us our students and our world's going to need later, but also maybe traditional schooling doesn't necessarily do a good job at prioritizing. So I see, you take this great wealth of creativity that is our students. You know, they're kids, even the ones that are 18. Right? I'm old enough I can say they're kids now. Are this huge amounts of these great resources, pools of creativity, and we're applying them with purpose. anchored in doing good things for humans and actually understanding, right? And we say that nowadays in our Twitter and technical world that we don't have empathy anymore, that we're losing our face-to-faces. This is exactly the two things that need to meet, says me.
Yeah, and I think that was the part that was, Chris was saying how design thinking is kind of taking what we have already been doing all along kind of thing, and that's definitely what I felt like in a way. I think the thing that was missing the most was what Brian just said, was the empathy component. I would have students designing things, building things and trying to make it function properly, in a certain way with a certain criteria that I usually came up with as the teacher. I had my rubric that I graded them on, and I had the criteria. Or if I got really creative, I had them come up with a little bit of the criteria. But pretty much it was just them guessing what I wanted and saying it back to me, and me going, of course, yes, you're geniuses.
You guys are great.
Yeah, we're great. Y'all can read my mind and regurgitate the answers I was thinking of. Right. Which in itself is an act of empathy, I guess, but only for the teacher.
That's right.
But I think what design thinking and what I've learned the most from the people in this group is how to bring empathy, the empathy component, to the process. Because that's what was really missing for me, is I had, and I can even go back to old slides of directions and kind of how I was shaping it, and even showing my students, all right, this is what we're going to do with this project. And I can go back to those slides and those procedures, and I can go, the empathy component was completely missing. Everything else I could see in there. I can see the ideation. I can see that we were even doing feedback. But I had so many of the components, but that empathy part was quite missing, and I see that as the most important part of it, and what makes it so relevant. Like y'all were saying, how it helps us reconnect and have our students and us as teachers reconnect to those others around us. And I think that was the part that, whenever I was trying to do it without knowing what I was doing, that's the part that I was really missing, and that I probably benefit the most from that empathy component in using design thinking.
Do you find that that's kind of an activator for your students as well?
Yes, I do, and I think there's, when you're first doing it with your students, especially younger students, it takes a little while for them, depending on the student, to kind of grasp that idea. But it's almost like once they grasp the idea of empathy, or they start really enacting on that empathy, it is amazing the creativity that comes out of that. And in design, you always hear about this idea that the parameters you would think would limit the creativity, but it actually helps empower the creativity in a very strange way.
Yeah. There was shoot, I don't remember who it was now, but at Big Ideas Fest we had people from IDEO around as helpers, and one of them said they don't like to admit it, but designers love constraints. It's like the haiku theory, right? It's
right.
We love that.
Yeah, and we had something. I'm a musicology background, and so in music we had very similar types of things, a fugue and different sonata form and all these different constraints, that 12-tone series that that on the surface you would think, wow, that would make your creativity, that would just make it formulaic, and it ends up not. I mean, it can be, of course it can be. Right. And I think even with design thinking, if you look at it as a process that's stagnant, then it can be a limit to creativity. But I think, and especially like it's demonstrated in the way y'all constructed y'all's the chat tonight, with that ebb and flow of the define and redefine, it shows the fluidity and the way that it can be reshaped in order to inspire creativity in a different way
Mm-hmm.
and not be a fixed process.
Well, and I think, Joseph, you hit on something. You hit on some of those major components to design thinking, the empathy, the gosh, you said about 5 different things, and I had it all rolled into one. It was pretty awesome. But when dealing with younger students, and I think Joseph, you have K through
6 now.
K through 6, and then
Yeah.
Brian, what age group do you work with?
I deal mostly with the high schoolers, but
Right.
but we're rolling it out school wide. We're early
that's
childhood
amazing.
through 12. So.
Well, which is
Absolutely.
great. So in the younger grades, for I have 3rd graders, those components, the empathy, the feedback, the like all these different steps that are part of the process have value. So even just working on empathy, just connecting with the characters in the books that they're reading, teaches them to think outside of themselves, and they can explore the world from different perspectives, which is really the greatest benefit I've seen with my students, is to go, oh my gosh, I just noticed a no bathing sign on a public bathroom. Like, what's that all about? Which led to a walk around our community, around our school, to help identify the homeless situation nearby. And then we talked to the police, and we talked to a couple of organizations in town. And our class broke up into groups, and from a simple what's that all about type of question, we're working with a copywriter out in California. One of our groups is reimagining homelessness to houselessness, because in their exploration, a lot of the people who were in shelters and stuff didn't consider themselves homeless because they still had their families, they had stuff like that, so they didn't consider themselves homeless. They just didn't have a house. So the kids really latched on to that.
Empathetic point.
It's great. And the thing is another thing that they were surprised to find out that of the entire homeless population, 6% elect to be homeless. And they were like, wow, that means 94% really don't want to. And then they discovered, there's another population, not the stereotypical, and what they like to describe as the scratched up guy, like the scratched up guy down at the corner. So they found out that there were families, their kids. The average age of what we now call houseless people in Atlanta is 12.
The average age?
Wow.
The average age. So they uncovered all kinds of things, and they
Did you say 12?
Yes, 12
Wow.
years old. So we've connected with some of these local organizations that shelter, and in fact, the church where our school is housed for a week 4 families over the holiday, and one of our groups redesigned the rooms, because at the end of it, it's 4 cots in a gray room with a window. So they were like, what, they need to make it feel like home. So they made end tables. They made a fireplace, a fake mantle to put up to make it look a little bit more homey, and
Wow.
And here again, all from a simple, and I say simple, but it's massive, empathy. Thinking about others, thinking from their perspective. What are the things that they want? Not what would I do in their shoes, but what would they do? What is their next move?
Exactly.
I like that. Yeah.
I was actually curious. I think I've read some Mary's posts about this on her blog.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know, she didn't get into how it all got into where it started from. But that's just an amazingly powerful story. I mean, that's just here's why package that. Yeah.
And the thing is I'm very fortunate to be in a community of educators. At Mount Vernon, we are so lucky to have the liberty to go, that's a great question. We are driven by your question today, and that led into, it guided our writing, it guided our reading. We were able to connect with different components of that. So it wasn't something extra that we did.
No,
Right.
It was what they brought, and we were able to continue with, and that's something that I really wanted to also get to with these questions that that Brian and Dan and I brought up tonight. Was don't think of it as something extra. You already do it,
Mm.
So it's kind of
That's very good, Chris, because a lot of times, like, I'm at we just opened a new school, and I'm trying to use design thinking on our campus more and more, and I'm lucky that I have a principal that's very open to new ideas and wanting to try new things, and she's really great about those kind of things. And I had this conversation before winter break of, I told her, look, I really want to start showing this to the staff, and I want to, try to get them involved in see their interest level, and like I did, and like a lot of people, starting out small, and like you said, Chris, earlier, even taking one section or one aspect of design thinking is a big deal. It's a big change, I think, in a way, as far as being able to use empathy and teach your students about empathy and how to do that. But and I was talking to her about this. How can I present it in a way to where it's not just another thing on their plate that they're having to do? And I love that you said that, because you are on a campus that is part of your curriculum, is design thinking. And it's nice to hear from someone that's third grade in the trend, right in the middle of the grade levels that I will be dealing with. We have pre-K through sixth grade, so third grade is I always like looking at the things that you're doing, because I know I can use it with my students, because it falls right in there in the sweet spot with my population that I'm working with. And but to present it to teachers in a way that they don't feel like, okay, you're going to make me do something else. And I think you said it great, that it's not one more thing, but it's I don't know how to view it, maybe like a framework for what you're already doing. How would you describe it? If it's not one more thing, what does design thinking bring to the class day, the class time, the traditional curriculum doesn't have?
That's a. I mean, that is the question, isn't it? Because, and we know our colleagues well enough to know that sometimes when they hear something new coming down the pipe, that, oh great, what project are we going to throw on next? And really, I think the essence of what design thinking allows is the process itself. The work. I tried to explain this to some of my students today. I was like, listen, just because your idea didn't, go off the way you wanted, what about all the work you did? Look at all the stuff you did. That's you've done something. It wasn't like, you pulled on the elephant's trunk and the light didn't cut on, but but you did everything else. You were working. And so for teachers, and then it's every population. It's every certainly in our line of work, I think every population has someone who goes, wait a minute. This design thinking, great. So now I've got another 4 hours worth of stuff to do tonight.
Right.
But really, is it? I don't want to call it the vehicle. When somebody comes in and says, "Oh man, we're going to Monster Jam this weekend and go watch some monster trucks," you don't kick that idea out necessarily, but how are you going to relate to your students? And in a simple question for us about the bathroom and about bathing, we let that drive the learning. And so when we're talking about the skills, when we go to a skills-based system, as we are doing, we're talking about what are the writing elements. It doesn't matter what they're writing about, but you had an interest in the homeless situation. Let's go with that. I think that really the flexibility for faculty is going to be in shifting gears, letting go of your filing cabinet, letting go of your plan, or boiling your plan down to its skeleton and going, okay, this is how this fits with what you want or what you're doing, young student, Padawan, learner. I don't know how does what does it look like in the upper grades, Brian?
You know, we haven't really rolled too much out in our classes yet. This is the first year we're rolling it out with, I was going to say a few, but it's more than a few, a number of faculty and other people who work at the school as a way to look at strategic thinking. So we're kind of starting, it's not top down necessarily, but using it on a higher level. I have an independent study group of kids in the high school, and been working things there with the way that they come in with everyone has a different thing that they've noticed or a thing that they want to look at or look into, you know, like the bathroom sign, this kind of thing. And a lot of times there's a lot of self-learning that has to go on. You know, you have an entire semester here to study what you want, which, you know, you can do in a certain different way with the older kids than you can do with the younger kids. But as a group, you're saying basically the same thing. When you were talking about, okay, they came in with this thing they noticed about the bathroom sign. Let's go with it. It's not that it's replacing, it's providing, I like the word framework, I like that. It's providing the framework for all the types of work that we do in a school anyway. And it's adding all those pieces that, like empathy and things that some people sometimes call soft skills, which I think is a little, it's derogatory to those skills, right? Like those skills aren't soft; they're actually quite hard. But it's really interesting. Even when we start off that, you know, using a piece of the design thinking mindset or process at the beginning, and we have to look at the students who are like, we're going to give you 14 weeks to study whatever you want. We're going to help you with scaffolding and how to learn, how to create a learning experience and all this kind of thing. What do you want to learn? And some of them go, well, I think it's something kind of about this. And I'm like, well, that's a great place to start. You know, so there's that self-learning. They have to figure out what they are motivated by, what they're really interested in, and just using those eyes open discovery kind of things, those exercises, turns things around. It brings them to the point quicker.
I think isn't that one of the biggest shifts from what I think I was doing when I was 8 to what students are doing to today. They qualify every single question. You can't ask a second grader or whatever, like, what's your favorite game? Their first answer or response is it an indoor game? I'm like, no. Just what is your favorite game? Does it have to be a board game? Like, no. What is your favorite game? You know, so I don't know if it's society has programmed us to ask you what your response should be, or I'm looking to give Joseph your answer. You know, as things were in your story. I mean,
right.
I think that if we can get them to focus on empathy, ask for feedback, you know, be driven by questions, you know, all these different things. If they will please just make something and see if it works, and just put it out there, put your neck out there. It's not going to get chopped off. You know, if we can just do, and then put value on every step of what you've done, and if they can feel the value of their work, then I think we've done something pretty big. And something else you said, Brian, always reminds me of this thing that Bo Adams and always, you know, I love having Bo in the corner. It's awesome. It's like having Michael Jordan on your basketball team.
I'm bowing to Bo right there.
I know, right? But he said to me once, or he said, and one time when he was talking with us, he said, you know, when the students ask the questions, you know, they own the answers. You know, which is so big, such a major thing for me to remember. Is that when kids come in and they have no idea what I'm talking about, and I say, well, what are you doing? And they say, I'm going to Monster Jam this weekend, then I need to relate to that, and I need to figure out how that student is going to ask a question. And when he asks the question, then we have somewhere to go, and we're driven by that the inquiry there, and we can use design thinking as our process to fill that for, you know. And so here we are back into the big circle to bring it all home. you know, then that's
Please.
I know. I went far. I went far for that.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
No, I get it. Yeah, it's a you were talking there about, to me it's you didn't use this word, but it's kind of a respect. I wrote on a blog post, I've seen other people, like just in the last week, I've seen it all over the place, that like no one owes you their attention. You have to make it relevant to someone. And for a good long time, I think traditionally in schools, we've had, I'm the teacher, you come in, and I'm going to tell you what's important and what you have to take your time and do. Forget the fact that you've had done 7 other things before you've gotten in my room today, that you're actually arguing a lot with the person that's right across the row from you. You didn't sleep at all last night because you didn't have dinner, or all these things that our human students come in with, and for that matter, our human employees and colleagues and faculty and everything else they come in with. Not only is it more powerful to tap into that, but it's disrespectful if you don't.
Right.
Right. Well, guys, we better wrap it up. I think we didn't get to the idea of environment and space, but I'm thinking that over the next few chats, I think that that's going to be addressed in some way. I'm looking at maybe if the 14th or so maybe still free, I might look into seeing if someone wants to do something about the design thinking and the environment, like the classroom setting. I think that would be a good way to kind of set the stage after this idea of the basics, kind of seeing how does the classroom that we see work with design thinking. So thanks guys for modding tonight and staying up late to do the show. And please, everybody, keep following the hashtag DTK12 chat all week long. Don't just think this is a Wednesday night thing. I think, as Dan Ryder says, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hashtag that you can follow and share ideas. And my favorite thing is seeing pictures of what people are doing in the classroom. I just absolutely love that. That's like my favorite. Whenever I see on my DTK12 chat little following column and in my feed there, if I see a picture, I'm all about that. I'm like favoring that thing before I even see it, I gotta be careful with that. No telling what I'm getting into.
I'm gonna put a lot more pictures up just for you, man.
Just random stuff.
Yeah.
Joseph's favoring it.
How might I eat this donut today?
Hashtag DTK12 chat. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And this chat will be available on the website later on. Probably tomorrow I'll try to put it on there to where we can access it. But you can also access it through the links that I sent out earlier. And I'll send out another one before the night's over, before I go to bed, go to sleep. So later, guys. Thank you all for hanging out. And see you soon.